I'm a visual learner. That's the way I got through school. I had to visually imagine the lessons. And that's what I hope you do today. As I share with you this story, I hope that you visually imagine it so you can grasp more out of it. And I always like to share with you how so that I know that what I'm going to speak to you about next. When God tells me something more than once, that I know He's trying to tell me something. And then I know I should share with you. There's many of you that might need to hear this too. And about 5 weeks ago, I went to a prayer vigil at mom's church. We go to different churches. And she invited me, and I wanted to go get blessed, so I went. And midway during the prayer vigil, a gentleman gets up and sings a song to bless us during the prayer. And this song talks about David, the story of David and Mephiboshet. And maybe you've never heard the story, maybe you've never even heard this name. So I pray that you grasp that beautiful story and the message that God gives us through it. Now, fast forward about a week and a half ago, somebody that gets blessed with his videos, her name is Martha, decides to send me this sing song. Mind you, she does not go to my mom's church. She doesn't even go to my church. She wasn't at the prayer vigil. This song was recorded about 10 years ago, so it's not a new release. It's not a fairly new song. It's not constantly being played right now. Actually, it's not even constantly being played. So it's a very random song. And it's such a random story. So then I knew God was trying to tell me something. And I'll share with you what. As you know, I've shared with you a little bit of my testimony and my part of me in each of the videos. And about 4 days ago, I received a final letter from the final case that I had opened, and it was my bankruptcy. As you know, I literally lost it all. I lost my bank account, all the money I had saved in there. I have been blessed by God to work for a great company, and I have been able to bless myself and be able to save money. And it was all gone. It was taken. I lost my vehicle. I lost my furniture that I had bought for myself. I lost everything. I was left in one day without even a quarter in my pocket. I'm not being drastic. I really was left without even one quarter in my pocket or under my name in one day. And when I tried to get it back, because I was married, they owned, here in California, they owned everything I owned. So basically, everything I had was his. I could not get it back. But it's okay. I rescued my son. That day, literally, my mother, and you know I've shared with you a little bit about that, but so it meant a lot for me to have my mother come and rescue me with my sister and my cousins and my aunts who all showed up with boxes. Because remember, I was beat up that day. And so they all showed up with boxes and they just grabbed clothing and whatever was essential and were out of there. And I left it all behind. To rescue my son and my life, I lost it all and I left it all. So that was 2014. So here I am, and God knows I'm about to receive this letter. And it was a hard step for me to do, to decide to declare bankruptcy. Because from being in a great position, trusting somebody, being respectful to somebody, giving all to somebody, and then everything being taken away and being lost. And because my two exes had gotten things under my name, I was left with all that. And I wasn't being able to provide for my son. So I had to make that decision. And God knew the letter was coming. He knew what it would mean to me. So He spoke to me before that happened. See how He works? He said, Yenni, I'm going to restore everything. You've lost it all. I didn't know this letter was coming. Man, when you put things in court, you know how the court system works. You don't know. There's no such thing as let me call a number and they'll give me a date. It's not going to happen. You basically sit down and you wait. But God knew. And He has me in His hands because I've rendered to Him. I surrendered to Him in this 4 years. And He's taking care of me. And this is the way He does it. For example, He sent me this to encourage me, to remind me, don't let that letter break you down. I have you, and I will restore everything. And He has. And I will share that along the way. There's a few doors that have been opening, so I will share that with you. But if you're in the same situation, maybe you lost it all too. Maybe during the market crisis, you lost your house that you have bought. Maybe you have been one of those individuals that trusted a real estate or a bank and you lost it. Or maybe you lost your employment and it has like a domino effect. You lose one thing, and then you lose another, and then you lose another. So I can understand. Maybe you ended up losing your family because of all that. I understand. But trust in God. If you focus in God, you surrender to God, and you hear His voice, He will restore. And don't just trust the materialistic, because sometimes we do that. Oh, I want this, I want that. But it's about here too. Your soul, your spirit. And I want to share a story with you, praying that He speaks to you the same way. And basically, it's found in 2 Samuel chapter 9. But I will go a little bit back in history. So Saul was the king of Israel, but he lost his kingdom. And the reason why, if you go back in Samuel, as you know, Samuel was a prophet of God. So whenever Samuel spoke, you know that God was speaking to you, that his words came from God. And Samuel had told Saul that he needed to wait. And a certain, if you go back to the chapter, you'll know why, but basically he had to wait. But Saul became impatient, and he decided to do it his way. Don't we do that? Sometimes the reason why we lose things, and I've shared this before, is because God says one thing, but who's the king of my life? I am. Who better knows what I need and what I want but me? Oh, God does. God created you. But we forget that. And sometimes we grow impatient. And because of that, because instead of waiting for what God has for us, we try to seek, or we try to find answers. And it could be anything. It could even be for a job. Something that little you think, no, but it's big, because God could have a huge store for you. But here, I'll just take this. And it ends up being a horrible place that it's horrible to work at, but you got yourself in there. And it could be relevant to many things, even relationships. So here Saul, he disobeyed, and because of disobedience, he lost his kingdom, and God gave it to David. And then David was going to become king. But during the battle with the Philistines, during that battle, Saul lost his life. He became fearful that there was going to be he was going to be overtaken, and so he killed himself. Fear again. I've spoken about that before. So he kills himself, and his sons die in that battle too. Now, before this battle came, Jonathan, who was the son of Saul, so he was a prince, had met David, and they become best friends. So Jonathan, who is the son of Saul, and David, who is a future king, became best friends. And like it says in Proverbs 18:24, more than a brother is a friend, a best friend. Why? Because a brother is by blood, like they'll have your back. But somebody who chooses to be your best friend, to be there with you, stand by you, and they're not your blood, that has more value because they're choosing by choice to love you. And that was David and Jonathan. That was a friendship. And it was such a deep friendship that they even made a pact, a covenant, which back in the day was so respected. I wish it was nowadays too, but back then it was so respected. When you made a covenant, you were sealed by it. And Jonathan was supposed to become the second in command under David when he became king. And David had promised to protect and guard Jonathan's family forever. But fast forward, here's his battle. Jonathan dies. David becomes king, right? And during this process, Jonathan had a child. That child's name is Mephibosheth. That's who that is. And that child was 5 years old when his father, Jonathan, died. So for 5 years, this child had been a prince in the castle. He had enjoyed everything from nannies to anything he could want to eat, being taken care of, being pampered, being spoiled, being a prince. He had everything. And then disobedience leads to him losing not only his grandfather in one day, but his father, his uncles in one day, the kingdom, his royalty lineage in one day, his land, his place of living, so he was homeless, money, food, everything was gone. And it gets worse. It says that his nanny became panicked at that moment. Again, something that can happen to us, and that's a reason why we in our lives end up losing things, because we lose the focus and trust in God. So here's his nanny who's taking care of Jonathan's child, Mephiboshet, who is also a prince and is part of the lineage. When this battle is going on, she panics, picks him up, and decides to run with him. But he falls down. When he falls, he injures himself, and it's probably the back, but it doesn't really say, but he injures himself, and he becomes crippled. He injured both his legs, and he's not able to walk again. He's crippled. And we don't specifically know if he was able to crawl or how he moved, but we know that he became injured and he couldn't walk again. So again, he lost his grandfather, his father, his uncles, his kingdom, his home, his money, his land, his servants, all the property he had, everything. And then he's left crippled. And to me, it symbolized, I always like to see that deeper in the Word of God, but it symbolized sometimes we're injured by life, by something, by fear, disobedience, mistrust, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. We get injured. And sometimes those injuries leave us crippled and leave us with marks that are with us forever. That's how deep they are. And here we are. And that was Mephibosheth. That's how drastic it had gone. So when I said he literally had lost it all, then in worse scenario than I've ever been, he literally was. And again, this is in 2 Samuel chapter 9. If you need to go back and read the story, it's beautiful. As hurtful as it is, it's beautiful what happens later on. So his name means shame, or one who brings shame. So not only did he go through all this, but even his own name, and I've spoken about labels before. You need to go back to the video, because I've spoken about that. His own name meant shame. So add on top of that. So here's this child growing up. He was 5 years old. So we keep on reading in verse 7. 20, 30, maybe even 40 years had gone by now. And David remembers his covenant to Jonathan. Because he loved Jonathan. That was his best friend. He remembers now. He's king. He's been king for a while. And we know that Mephibosheth is an adult because by now he has a son, Micaiah. He has a son by now. So we know that he's an adult 20, 30, 40 years later. We're not sure. But David, remembering, decides to seek someone left from Jonathan's lineage to bless and to do justice. How many of us have gone through something where we said, I know God is going to do justice to me? 20, 30, maybe 40 years have passed by. Imagine how much patience you need to have. But he does it. You just need to be faithful and focused in God. But he does it. He's telling you right here. It's not in my time. It's under his time. So that time has passed. And David suddenly remembers and said, I need to do justice. I made a covenant and I need to keep it. So he decides to find out and seek who's left. They let him know, oh, yeah, there's Mephibosheth. Remember the guy who, is the son of Jonathan and who's left crippled? Yeah, he's left. So the king sends for him. The king of Israel calls onto this person, Mephibosheth, this broken soul. How do we know that he was still broken? It says Mephibosheth at that moment was living in Lodebar. And Lodebar, in Hebrew, it means deserted land, dry land, basically no fruit. That's where Mephibosheth was living. And sometimes we're left that way. Sometimes we go through that, and I shared this before, that valley of the shadow of death, in the dry land. And that's where he was found. That's where Jesus, through David, it would take it symbolically, calls upon us. And he shows up, and this is what he says. Shows up, and he goes to the king and says, why would you regard a dead dog like me? Not just a dog, but he calls himself a dead dog like me. So therefore, we can imagine and know what state of mind, by all these decades, Mephibosheth was already in. He was tired, depressed, he was in pain. He had gotten used to being that crippled guy, that dead dog. He probably, remember the labels that you pick up yourself, that I've picked up, and I now refuse. He probably had been called dead dog many times, the people in town. Remember, he lived in a dry land. So that tells me that probably a lot of bitterness in there. He probably had been called dead dog, and that's why he regarded himself as a dead dog. And David ignored that. David didn't even address that. David said, you will now be restored. He was like, stand up. And everything that is rightfully yours will be given back to you. That's what David says. He didn't even acknowledge. He's like, no, that's not who you are. You are the son of Jonathan, whose grandfather is Saul. And everything that's yours, land, servants, animals, everything will be restored back to you, put under your name once again. Not only that, but David says, and from now on, I want you to sit at my table and you're going to eat with me every day. You're going to eat with a king. And historians say that when you look into that, historians of the culture of back in the day of the Israelites say that doing something like that from a king, it literally means like he's practically treating him as a son. It's a treatment of a father to a child, to their own son. He literally got picked up from being homeless, penniless, crippled, nothing, to being restored. Everything that was rightfully his was given back. And he was sad at the table of the king every night. That person who the people from the town, I'm sure, had considered a dead dog, had called a dead dog, had called a crippled man, had probably laughed at. Remember, his name means shame, the one who brings shame. That person was restored by God through David and sat at the table of the king every night to eat. And that to me is amazing, because if we go back to Romans 8:16, what does God say? What does Jesus say in his word? God said, you guys are now my children. So take it to yourself. I don't know what you've lost. I don't know what you've gone through. I don't know what labels you keep carrying and what names that you picked up that you've been called and you're still carrying yourself. And you live in this dry land without fruit, and you keep saying, well, I can't get up. I can't seem to get up. Who are you supposed to render to? When Mephibosheth showed up, he got on his knees. He literally got on his knees. Because that's what you did. Have you gotten on your knees? Have you? Truly, and surrender and say, I'm going to let go of this label. Let go of this hindering. I won't see myself crippled anymore. Because remember, I've shared with you, it's an act. You have to do it. It's not about just saying it, oh yeah, I want to, and reading the word and saying, oh, I believe the word. It's doing it. Getting up and saying, okay, Mephibosheth had to get up and decide to show up every day to eat at the king's table. It wasn't that David was dragging him. He had to decide to get up. And when the king called him, he could have even decided not to show up. He said, what, me? No, this is a joke. But he did show up. He had to decide to walk through that palace and show up and say, yes, here I am, and get on his knees in reverence. And we have to do that because remember, it says in the Word of God, again, there's many verses, but I'll leave you just with Romans 8:16. We are his children. He does treat us the same way. And sometimes we're looking to be restored materialistic things, but it starts from in here. David did not address that dead dog comment. David immediately addressed him and said, no, you are from this lineage. We have to start from in here. God wants to restore our peace, our joy, our trust, our confidence in him. That joy that it's every day, especially with things going around in the world right now. We need that joy and that peace that's beyond understanding. We don't know what to do. We trust in him. We don't know what decisions to make. We trust in him. When the world brings us pain and discomfort and reminds us of hate and evilness, we need his joy and his love to surround us. And that's what he wants to restore in you, first of all, before any materialistic things may come. It starts with your spirit. So I pray that through this lesson, you gain that trust again. And again, I recommend that you go back and read it, 2 Samuel chapter 9. And dwell in it. Dwell in his word so that it speaks to you and that you learn to trust again. That is going to come to you, but it starts with your soul first. What needs to be restored there? That trusting again, that you surrender and you get on your knees again and you say, here I am. And I know you can give it to me, but I need to come to you first. And I pray that you do. I pray that maybe my testimony inspires you to know that your day is coming and you are in his hands. When you surrender, you're in his hands. Trust in God.